What's up, BookTube? Welcome back to Traumatic Tomes, and today I want to talk about my May reading wrap-up, which I have decided to call Studs and Duds, as I feel that's an accurate representation of my May reading for 2025, if you're watching in the future. Now in my What Are You Reading in May video, which I posted at the beginning of May, I formally declared that I would be reading 7 books in May. Those being the 5 Bulgarian novels, Maria Tatar's literary or historical analysis on fairy tales by Norton Publishing, and Isaac Asimov's Chronology of the World, which is massive, and I said I wanted to at least make a dent in that. And as some of you who may know me or have followed my channel for a little while might know, I'm terrible at TBRs. I make them and I break them. I'm adulterous in my reading. I'm inspired by mood and frivolity and caprice and fancy and all those jolly things, and I never end up doing any of my TBR. But I would like to announce that I completed 4 of the 7 books on the TBR for May. 4 of 7. That's an outstanding month for me in terms of keeping commitments. So big win, everybody applause, get on your feet, start cheering and whooping. This is big. So yeah, now I'm going to go into the books that I read in May. There are 7. Read 7 books in May. I don't know how many pages. I don't have any stats here. It doesn't really matter. I feel that the reading month was enough. Usually I would like to do more, but I had some pretty big projects this month, so I'm satisfied with the reading. Now, there were 6 physical books. I did do 1 audiobook. And I will preface this by saying that in March of this year, I was really into audiobooks for some reason. And this one last book was a remnant of that small phase. I'm back off of audiobooks now. I'm back on the physical wave, the wavelength, because I struggle with audiobooks. I struggle to comprehend and understand and document in my mind what the audio says to me. I'm more of a visual learner. Now, I understand other people are more auditory, and I respect that, but I am personally now against audiobooks for my own reading, at least for now. So, yes, but going into the first physical books, I managed to read the first 3 novels of the Bulgarian, of which I promised 5 in May. Now, it is only May 28th on the date of this video being filmed, so I could finish the final 2 books in this series, but I won't. So we got book 1, The Pawn of Prophecy, book 2, Queen of Sorcery, and book 3, Magician's Gambit. So, if you don't know, The Bulgarian is a fantasy series by David Eddings and Lee Eddings, who did some stuff and went to jail, but nobody really knows that. Yeah, it's more of a kid-style fantasy. It's not for children, but it's of that basic fantasy trope, post-Tolkien world. This series is set in the land of Aluria, in the kingdoms of the West and the Angaroks. It's mainly got men. There's no, as far as I have seen, there's no like dwarves or elves, or there are some kind of like orc-like creatures, and there's monsters. But the main thing is there's different nations per se in this world, and they're kind of modeled off of like Egypt or Mongolia, blah blah blah. But the Vikings, whatever, and there's sorcerers, and there's a Dark Lord named Torak, and the goal of this series is to stop the Dark Lord. There's a magical orb that was stolen, and there's a young farm boy who it turns out has magical powers. So yeah, pretty basic story. I actually enjoyed Pawn of Prophecy. It was nice, it was cozy. It was a beginning, and I do enjoy beginnings. I've read the first Harry Potter probably double-digit times. The first Percy Jackson, I don't know, not double-digit, but a lot of times. And this one, I liked it. I wasn't wowed by it, but I was excited to keep going and continue this narrative. Since I consider this to be my Wheel of Time, I'm trying to read the full series, 5 books, and I don't want to spend time reading Wheel of Time. But yeah, in Pawn of Prophecy, this big group is assembled, like the Avengers, and well, it predates the Avengers. But yeah, they start on this quest narrative, and they travel to a few different lands on the map. And then Queen of Sorcery continues the quest, and Magician's Gambit, book 3, also continues the quest. And the way I see it, it looks like David Eddings was just trying to hit as many parts of the map as he could without repeating. So they're going like hitting all the sections of the map. And in book 2 and 3, it felt repetitive. I wasn't having as good of a time as book 1. Things were being slowly revealed, which kept me interested enough, but it's a very predictable story. And I was getting a little more bored in book 2. Book 3 was a more jagged narrative where there were some highs, but the lows were lower than book 2. So I just haven't been able to get into book 4 yet. I think it's called Castle of Wizardry. But I'm 60% of the way done with the series now with these 3 books. So I kind of feel the sunk costs sinking in. So we'll see if that gets onto my June TBR, but not sure. So Bulgarian, first 3 books, decent. I gave book 1 3 stars. Not that I really care about star ratings, and these 2 I gave 2 stars. They were bleh. So yeah. All right. Next book, that was my audio read for the month, which I believe I mostly listened to it in April, actually. But I finished it after the first few days of May, so I counted it in May. Sue me. But the book is called The Infernal Machine by Stephen Johnson. Put it right here. This, when was it published? I think it was published in 2024. Stephen Johnson is known for his nonfiction writing in like microhistory with narrative microhistory with compelling theses, as well as writings on like inventions and ideas across history. And if you watched my top 10 books of 2024, you might remember that one of those books was Enemy of All Mankind by Stephen Johnson, about the pirate Henry Every and his maniacal quest for glory and then sudden disappearance in the years preceding the golden age of piracy. Great book. I freaking loved that book. It was awesome. So I decided to audio The Infernal Machine. I didn't know what it was other than the subtitle said something about like dynamite and terrorism or something like that. I don't have it. I don't have the book with me. But what this book goes through is like wicked complex. Johnson weaves narratives of the history of the anarchist movement, especially American anarchism, from like 1980 to 1920. He combines that with the history of dynamite from Alfred Nobel all the way up to the June 1919 bombings, which are a series of, I don't know if I have the year right, I apologize, but this was a series of huge bombings in the US that I think a lot of them were foiled. A lot of the bombing attempts were foiled, but just like, if that happened now, we would be in mass panic. Thank God there was no social media back then. But there's that. And then the third major narrative, which is fractured into all sorts of things, is the rise of the surveillance state based on the technological advancements of the New York City Police Department as a reaction to the anarchist violence of the 1880s to 1920s. And this goes into how detectives managed to this originated in like France and England, but fingerprinting and anthropometry, I don't know if I said that right, but like the measuring of the head and everything, the eyeballs, like that, the mug shots. Did I say fingerprinting? Like biometric analysis. All this was hastened by the anarchists and their bombing campaigns. Not that these were organized campaigns directed by like the leadership of the anarchists, like Peter Kropotkin and Emma Goldman and Alexander Berkov. Those are the big ones. And I really enjoyed reading about Emma Goldman, actually. I didn't know anything about her, and I think she's a pretty cool character in U.S. and Russian history. So it'd be interesting to learn more about her. But this is how the anarchist movement, which was very anti-state as a definition, managed to bring about the police surveillance state quicker than it should have happened. And I find that to be an ironic result, as I think most people would. Now, I think Johnson got a little bit too far into some depths of knowledge, and that kind of weakened the overarching theme of the Infernal Machine book. But it was a good enough read, and I actually remember a lot more of this than I should have for it being an audiobook. So good on Johnson. I recommend this book. It's a nice little piece of like forgotten history, I think, or at least for me. I don't really know anything about late 1800s, early 1900s America. Maybe that's just a knowledge gap on my part, but yeah, I found the book interesting. So The Infernal Machine by Stephen Johnson. There. Next up, we got a good book, Mythology by Edith Hamilton. Now, you may notice that I haven't talked about the fairy tale book by Maria Tatar yet. I wasn't feeling that, so I switched to general myth, Greek myth, instead of fairy tales. That was what was calling to me. And I have Bullfinch's Mythology on the shelf right there, but I wanted to try out Edith Hamilton's first. I've heard it's really good, and I think it's definitely more modern than Bullfinch's. But even though Edith, I believe she was born in 1867. Now, I think this book came out in, the 30s or the 40s? 1930s? 1942. But yeah, this prose style does not feel like Hamilton was born, when the Civil War ended. This felt so modern, like it could have been written today. But yeah, if you don't know what Mythology by Edith Hamilton is, it is just her retelling the Greek myths and a couple Norse myths. And before each myth she talks about, she usually gives a little introduction saying who wrote the myth, or where does she draw the myth from? Is it from Homer or Ovid's Metamorphoses or Apollodorus or whoever, Pindar, or Sophocles, Euripides, Aeschylus, Aristophanes, whoever. And it's funny, oftentimes Edith would say Apollodorus is so boring, but he actually wrote a more specific narrative than Ovid, so I had to choose Apollodorus because Ovid was drawn to frolicking and not actually telling how the myths were. So it's kind of funny to learn what Edith had to say about all these writers. But yeah, it goes through the Greek gods and early myths, the Titans and the creation of the world. Then through tales of lovers, Pyramus and Thisbe, Baucis and Philemon, and people like that. Then to adventurers, Perseus, Theseus, all those bad boys, Atalanta. Then she goes through the big epics, the Iliad, the Odyssey, and the Aeneid. And plus, pretty much every Greek myth that was written about by ancient writers. And then at the end, she goes a little into Norse mythology, some origins and the Norse gods. I found that part really interesting because I don't know anything about Norse mythology other than having watched the Thor movies as a teenager. So, yeah, I thought this was a great overview of Greek myth. It was informative, it was written well, it was comprehensive. This is almost 500 pages. The last page of the index is 495. And this is an oversized mass market paperback from Grand Central Publishing. And my word, the pages were soft, like warm butter. I don't think I've ever felt a page like this. It just is ripe. I freaking love these pages so much, and I want more of them. But yeah, if you need to shore up your Greek mythology knowledge, definitely would recommend Mythology by Edith Hamilton. I thought it was great. And this is just a little different, but I am still in awe of how Rick Riordan managed to pack so much into his Percy Jackson books from Greek mythology. I think without those books, we would have a completely mythologically illiterate group of children and young adults. But I think old Rick really pulled through and saved some of society with those books. So yeah. All right, second to last book. I finished this maybe 30 minutes ago, 40 minutes ago. This is Inez by Carlos Fuentes, famous Mexican novelist, maybe the most famous Mexican novelist. And Inez, this is a hardcover by Farrar, Straus and Giroux. It was published in 2000, which is almost 40 years after Fuentes' first book was published. And I'm really conflicted by this book. I have loved Carlos Fuentes' writing since the first day that I started reading Terra Nostra, his huge epic on the building of a cathedral in Spain, historical fiction. And since then, I have read two of his smaller books, kind of novellas, and I wasn't too impressed. And now I decided to read Inez, another novella. It's 150 pages. And expectations were low going in because I saw it had a 3.2 on Goodreads. Not that I judge everything by Goodreads ratings, but 3.2 is on the very low end of all ratings on Goodreads, so there had to be something wrong with it. Yeah, I'm just really conflicted on this book. There were some highs and there were a lot of lows. Now the plot follows, well, there's multiple narratives, but the main narrative is a genius composer named Gabriel Atlan Ferrara, and it's him as a 93-year-old man kind of reflecting on his life as he only a few times in his life meets this singer named Inez Prada, formerly Inez Rosenzweig, I think. But they have a tumultuous and passionate connection that only lasts for, I don't know, a few days, a few weeks total throughout decades and decades. And all throughout this story, the Damnation of Faust by Berlioz, I'm not sure if I said that right, is being composed in the background by the main character, Gabriel. He's an orchestra conductor. And that's about all I understand. The rest is kind of gibberish. There's a second narrative about some sort of prehistoric, primordial couple having a baby and meeting and having a baby and then going to a village. I barely understand how that connected to the modern part, other than the fact that there was a crystal seal, like a brooch or something that had some significance in both stories. But I don't know, the story didn't really make any sense, and there was no plot. It was just Gabrielle and Inez meeting a couple times and having smart conversation. The one thing that I really liked was that this book kind of carried the same writing style as Terra Nostra, which I adored. And while I found this to be a bit overwritten and really could have been edited more. There was a decent amount of repetition that I don't think was purposeful. I don't think it added anything to the narrative. It was just like rehashing something from the last page like multiple times. But the writing style was awesome again, but it didn't. Good writing can't save such a poor narrative, poor story. This one didn't work for me. I think it's my least favorite Fuentes novel so far out of the four. But it's short enough. I'm not turned off of Carlos Fuentes. I know he's got it in him. If I have to, I will read Terra Nostra again and not suffer through all his backlog. So, Inez by Carlos Fuentes, dud, unfortunately. And the last book, the Big Daddy, the stud, got Asimov's Chronology of the World, the history of the world from the Big Bang to modern times. And by modern times, he means 1945. Now, I said I would try to read all of this, but I didn't read all of it. I read the first 200 pages. And you might think, oh, only 200 pages? Like, that's not a lot. I mean, I agree, but the first 207 pages encapsulated the Big Bang up to 1500 AD. So, if we're just talking about, like, human agricultural history, I read 11,500 years of history. But there's a little physics and chemistry and biology, evolution kind of thing jived in there. But yeah, I decided to stop at 1500. I probably should have stopped at 1000 AD, but I kind of got caught up in the whole Norman invasion and then Wars of the Roses in England, all the the 100 Years War in France and Mongol invasions. It was kind of getting a little juicy, so I stayed on until 1500. But I cut it off at 15 because that's kind of when modernity starts. There's a lot of different catalysts to move from the Middle Ages to modernity, like the printing press and the end of the 100 Years War, and like the discovery of the Americas and such, or the rediscovery. So yeah, I cut it off there. Now, I am going to count this as a book. Maybe not for my reading log or anything, but for reading purposes, this was a long stint of reading that I did for only 200 pages. And I found it really valuable to have read this book. I think it is an incredible reference book. Because many history books, unless it's a textbook, it's a little hard to reference back into like what was happening here, what was happening there, at what time. This book being a chronology, it goes year period by year period, like 850 AD to 900 AD. Like, what were the Franks doing? What was England doing? What was the Pope doing? What were the Byzantines doing? What was Japan doing? Blah, 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 blah. So you can just pick out a set of years. If you were like, I don't remember what was happening in Rome in like 320 AD, you could go like, oh, let me see, 300, Rome, Diocletian abdicated in 305, blah, 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 blah. So yeah, I think this is great for reference. Now, this was written by Isaac Asimov. It's not a historian. Isaac Asimov was a scientist and a science fiction writer, and he's not a historian. But he did write this massive book, chronologizing the whole world. What he didn't do is he didn't source the book. I'm not sure that all of it's true, but I don't care that much if I start saying things and they're not true. Somebody will correct me with the truth, and then I will know more truth than I did before. So knowing this is fine for now. I'm currently going through with my history notebook, the first part of which I took notes on Palmer's History of the Modern World, but I've started on like the second third of this book, doing notes on the chronology, just kind of getting my knowledge where I would like it to be on the history of the ancient world mostly. And yeah, the writing style is super simple. Asimov's a good informational writer. It's not bland. He does throw in some opinions. Asimov is not afraid to say what he thinks, especially when talking about when talking about religion and other polarizing subjects like that. Yeah, I'm not sure when I will finish this, if I will ever finish this. I would like to. First, I've got to finish my notes and then let those sink in. I wish there were maps in this book. There's no maps at all. I think that detracts from the book, especially when you're going through so many empires and one conquers the other and one's blah, blah, blah. Where is everything? I don't know. I have a reference book of maps behind me, but it would be easier if it was in here. Yeah. Anyways, this book was awesome. I don't know where you can find it. I bought it on thriftbooks.com because I really wanted it. But yeah. Anyways, that's my month of reading for May. Have you guys read any of these? I don't know if you have, other than Hamilton's Myth. But yeah, thanks for watching. See you guys for the June TBR video.